In this video, I'm going to show you the whole process of creating a Django web app. That includes all the mistakes and difficulties that I faced. Don't get me wrong, I do understand the basics, but I'm still learning. Often when I'm stuck, I head over to the Django documentation site to gain some help. And when I'm really stuck, I head over to Google or Stack Overflow. And yes, I do copy and paste code sometimes, but not without understanding it. In this video, we are going to create a bullet journal app. If you do not know what bullet journaling is, it's basically a method of journaling where you capture your thoughts, but in a more compact form. And usually it has a pretty fun layout. I'm going to do this video in parts because I cannot work on the code every day. In this video, we are going to set up our basic Django project and design the layout. By the way, you'll notice that I'm wearing different clothes in this part of the video. And that's because I actually reshot this introduction. The original introduction looked really weird. And I'm just trying to get more comfortable on the camera, so I hope this looks better. Please let me know what you think in the comments down below. So I basically fired up a terminal, and in the terminal I created a virtual environment. If you don't know what a virtual environment is, it's basically a room that your computer can create, and in that room we can test code, break stuff, do whatever we want. So here I created the basic structure of a Django project. Inside my Django project, I created a Django app. In the settings .py file, I registered my app so that my project knows that there is an app that exists. And in the urls.py file of the project, I registered the urls.py file from the app so that Django knows that if there are any URLs on an app level, that the project is aware of it. Okay guys, I basically set up my basic Django structure with a project and an app, and I registered my app in the settings. Now we can go ahead and create the content of our pages, and I'm going to start with the homepage. So now I created the location of our page, the content of our page, and we used a basic Bootstrap starter template. Now we can choose to use Bootstrap templates. They have some standard templates out there filled out with some style and some basic structures. But for this web app, I'm going to create my own page. Now, before I'm actually going to start to code the Bootstrap template or my HTML page, it's good to think about, hey, what kind of layout do I actually want? And I already did a little bit of work. Let me show you guys. So here in basically a PowerPoint, what I did is I've basically drawn a page of what I think my page should look like. And I've tried to keep it as simple as I can. So over here, on the top, I want a nav bar. And basically I want 4 boxes or 8 boxes divided in 2 rows. And each of these boxes stand for one day. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And then the last box is basically for a other stuff kind of thing. So how I came up with the idea was basically I went to Google and I searched for bullet journal template, bullet journal ideas. And then what you can see here over here is all these kind of layouts. So I basically looked for some simple ones, and then I found something like this, and I thought, hey, I can create this in a Bootstrap template. So I basically need to create a couple of boxes and a top navbar. Easy peasy, right? I actually forgot to register the locations of my app. Here's the thing, I don't want to use Flex because I'm not that familiar with Flex yet, and also I've tried a couple of times to use Flex, but it doesn't give me the desired result. So I need to keep searching. So I'm having some difficulties with getting these cards spread evenly over the page. I'm familiar with the grid system in Bootstrap, and actually tried to use the class attributes to evenly spread them, but it's not working, probably because I'm using them wrong. It's time for an investigation. So I found a solution on Stack Overflow that seems to work, and I'm a little bit surprised because it seemed so simple, and it also feels like I should have been able to achieve the same with the basic Bootstrap grid, but I'm not going to complain. It works. I did have to make an adjustment from height to max, from max height to height. When I type in max height and save it, it looks like this. It still doesn't actually, spread out evenly. But when I set the height to fixed 100%, boom, I get it nice. Now I want some padding on the left and right. Now I'm going to create 4 of these boxes. By the way, let me show you guys a cool trick that I learned on the way. If you go right mouse click and you go to inspect element, you're able to see which part of your HTML code is causing which effect. So here I can see what my navbar is. I can see my entire container. So if I go down here, so you see the entire container here. And then I know actually here, this is my full row, and then this is part of the row. Oh, this is part of my row. For debugging, this is great because here you can actually see which part of your HTML code is causing which effect. And then if you don't like the little bit of padding on the left and right, or you need to find out what effect is created how, you can actually find out here, because it's often just a hassle to look through the code here. Now I added some custom styling in the cards. Basically, this is just a standard Bootstrap code. You can go ahead and look in the documentation. They have standard references for their colors. They have standard references for basically the text center, text uppercase, stuff like that. I didn't create a separate CSS file because even though it's best practice, I'm scared something will break. And this works right now, so I'm leaving it like this. Feel free to customize the styles however you want. Bootstrap has some great documentation and you can just knock yourself out. By the way, don't worry, I'll make sure to post my code on GitHub as soon as I'm done. Now, before we continue, I want to talk about static. So when I was setting up the structure of my Django project, I also included a folder called static. Now this is basically a built-in method that Django has for referencing CSS, JavaScript, and image files. Let me show you. Here in settings.py, it basically calls static URL static. And then by creating a static folder, what I can do is I can place assets in that folder. So I found a pretty nice picture that I want as a background. Now what I can do is I can go over to my home HTML page, all the way to the top, and say load static this, and then my body here, my body in the CSS one underneath the body anchor, I can say background image so when I go to hello world, refresh, there you go. In my background I have this nice image that gives it that doodly effect. Now obviously the main benefit for using static is that I don't have to include a cumbersome URL path every time, like desktop / images / whatever. By inserting a URL like this, I can have it locally so it works offline and it keeps my code clean. Another thing that I want to do is actually the font here. I don't like it and I want to change it. I kind of forgot how I can do this because I know in my CSS I can do it over here, but I want to include custom fonts. I'm just gonna Google how I can do that because that's just easy. There, I like that. So now that we have our basic structure done, we have our basic template, we have our layout done, we need to actually pass information and store our information that we want to record in our bullet journal. Now we can use Django models and Django forms for this. Django models are basically tables that we can store with information, and forms is basically a form in which we can enter data that then helps us pass that information to store it in the Django model. Okay, so let's create our model and use it in our function.